I want you to picture the scene. You and your team are charged with developing a new model to replace your company's best-selling product. You have weeks ahead of you of sleepless nights, weekends where you don't see your family, you've missed dinner with your in-laws, you've missed your children's school play, you've missed school sports days, you've spent days in meetings with Nigel from engineering talking about spring rebound rates, you've had meetings with those kids from marketing who say everything has to be on trend. And then the day comes where you have to present this finished product to your boss, only for you to walk in to the meeting, palms sweating, to be told, scrap that, we've sold the company and we can't use anything that's gone before. The new owners, who we've sold to, want you to use their underpinnings. Oh, and by the way, you've only got 2 years to do it. That's how I assumed the conversation went in Vauxhall-Opel's product planning department when they were told that General Motors had sold them to the PSA Group, the owners of Peugeot, Citroën and DS automobiles. So of course, the Corsa they'd spent 4 years developing had to be scrapped because it now had to be based on the new Peugeot 208. So here it is. It's the new Corsa, and it's unlike any other Corsa that's gone before. But is it any good? Well, in the aspects of consumerism, here at AutoEV, we're here to find out for you. Nope, don't thank us. Think of us as the gift that keeps on giving. The original Corsa, in the UK at least, hit the showrooms in 1993 as a replacement for the Nova. Now that car was already called Corsa in Europe, as Nova means, well, no go in Spanish. So the Corsa nameplate is now nearly 40 years old. Yet here in the UK, the Corsa has been through just 4 generations up until now. The little Vauxhall was changed with taking on the almost invincible Ford Fiesta in the sales charts, and it's been a regular there in the top 10 since its launch. That was all set to continue with the 5th generation car, yet to stem huge financial losses, GM, Vauxhall-Opel's owners, decided to sell the brands to raise some much needed cash. Step in PSA and a brand new direction for the little Corsa. Now, like I said, the new Corsa is completely different in style to the old ones. Gone's that kind of very sort of like sharp nose leading up to sort of like a bustled back that you used to get, and there's no more 3-door available. The old ones had 3 and 5 doors, there's just a 5-door now. It's a much more mature looking design. It's almost like a sort of shrunken Astra rather than a sort of, you know, falling on from where it was, but it still follows some very cute Vauxhall-Opel design signature with this new lights and the grille at the front. I guess sort of kick up here in the side panels. It's a much more mature design. It's not as pretty as the 208 or the Renault Zoe, but it's quite a handsome little car, almost like a Volkswagen Polo in a sort of Skoda Fabia way. But then, weirdly, going for a more mature design, they've then tried to make it more youthful by giving it this kind of weird bright colours and contrast roof, which I think is really at odds with the more mature kind of design they've tried to do. And oddly enough, I think the car looks a little bit better in more sombre colours like blacks and greys with the sort of like the one colour all over. That being said, as I say, it is quite a distinctive little car and it's a move away from what's gone before. Now, like I said, the car is a 5-door only and it's based on the new Peugeot 208, so the chassis is exactly the same. That being said, headroom is better in here than it is in the 208. It doesn't feel quite as hemmed in as the Peugeot did. Now, the seat's set up for myself at 5'7", 5'8", and I've got reasonable knee room. There's okay foot room as well, but of course if you're sitting behind a taller driver or you're tall yourself, you might struggle a little bit. Also as well, there's no centre armrest. And there's no USB ports back here for charging sort of like things like iPads and such for children. And the door bins are really tiny. There's hardly any room in there for a water bottle or anything decent at all. And the boot is 311 litres, so good for class as well. The only thing is there's no underfloor storage as like the Peugeot for your cables, and you do only get this additional Type 2 charging cable as well, the granny one as they call it, with the 3-pin plug. That's a cost option on the car. So as I say, there's nowhere to put these cables in here. Although your seats do fold 60-40 as in the Peugeot, although they don't fold flat, it still gives you a good reasonable amount of space. And of course, like the Peugeot as well, it is nicely finished in here. One thing we criticised the Renault Zoe for, all of its exposed metal. Now in here, it's a little bit like the outside. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. There's just nothing particularly exciting about it. You know, you don't get that lovely dash that you get in the Peugeot E208 with an iCockpit. You do get this big infotainment screen up here, which is a 10-inch version in this model, which is an Elite Nav. There is a lower trim level available, the SE, which gets a 7-inch touchscreen as well. And thankfully, unlike the Peugeot, you do get physical climate control buttons down here, which are nice and easy to use, as well as a volume control here and the usual array on the multifunction steering wheel. You also do get a digital instrument cluster, which looks a little bit basic at first after you've used the Peugeot, but it's actually quite nice. It's quite clear, and all the information that you expect is there. Now, again, there is a raft of safety equipment, which obviously we become used to in these cars, but it also includes a driver drowsiness alert, which is good, considering how dull this interior seems to be. That said, it's well built, it's comfortable, the seats are okay, although they don't offer the same type of support that we had in the GT spec E208 we had the other week. And you can see it's still got this sort of pistol grip style transmission drive lever down here. The wheels adjustable. It is a fully round wheel and obviously bigger than the Peugeots. It's not got that small wheel where you look over it. It's a conventional steering wheel. And again, on this Elite model, it is heated. You also get heated seats. There's Bluetooth, there's Apple CarPlay, there's Android Auto, there's LED matrix headlights, there's heated steering wheel on this model, there's automatic headlamps. I mean, there is a huge amount of equipment available on it, but it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't sort of excite. It all looks a bit, as we would say in Scotland, a bit dreich. Just like the Peugeot, the Corsa develops 136 PS, so it is down on power than the likes of the Renault Zoe, the Mini Electric and Honda E, but it still feels quite sprightly despite the added weight to the car. 0 to 60 comes up in just under 8 seconds, so it's plenty quick enough for a small 5-door Super Mini. Where it lacks a little bit, however, is it lacks a little bit of the chassis sophistication that the Peugeot has. It seems to understeer a little bit more. The front tyres wash out than they do in the Peugeot. And although the car is it's a comfortable cruiser, there's a resonance coming from them as well, which I find quite odd. I don't think it's road noise. I don't know, it seems like there's almost like a little wind resonance coming through from the wheel arches that you just don't get in the Peugeot, which I find quite strange. The primary ride, while we're talking about suspension, is okay. It crashes through the usual sort of like expansion joints and drain hole covers that you do get in the other cars, but its secondary ride with its damping is pretty good. It does even things out a little bit more on the more open roads, and the body roll stays in check. It just lacks that, I don't know, as I say, that sophistication that the Peugeot just seems to. You don't feel like there's a much more dynamic car lurking underneath. You think there would be much more work needed to turn it into sort of like a GSI or a VXR or something. Unfortunately, where it does follow the Peugeot is in the brakes. These brakes just don't inspire any confidence as far as I'm concerned. They just have that deadness to them, and it's really, really odd. It's just got that, I don't know, you push it, nothing seems to happen, and then it kind of bites, and it just feels a bit mushy, like there's like a wet sponge underneath the pedal, and it just doesn't inspire any confidence at all in the braking system. Now, like the Peugeot and like the Renault, you've also got the brake regeneration, and of course you're in the drive mode in D, and it's one level of brake regen, which is by pulling the lever back to this B mode. And again, it doesn't have the sort of the one pedal driving of something like the Nissan Leaf with its E pedal, or the little Honda, but it is quite nice. And again, it's enough, and you do get used to it, and the way it bleeds in is quite good. What you also have is, again, the 3 driving modes that we seem to be getting used to in all of these cars: normal, eco and sport. Now, putting it into sport does give a bit more of a sharper throttle, which is quite nice. And as I say, the car's not really lacking in performance. It's fine for that. It's just in the handling, it just lacks that finesse that the Peugeot just seems to have lacked. It's odd, you'd think they were the same, but it just isn't. You also don't get the sort of the sport seats. We mentioned this in the interior section. You don't get the sport seats like you do in the Peugeot that have the nice kind of shoulder support, but they're okay. I mean, they're fine. I mean, there's enough sort of like side support. They're certainly better than the ones in the Zoe, where you tend to sit on top of those and roll around in them rather than sort of like being held into place. And the driving position is nice. You know, there's nobody going to find real fault with the driving position in the car. You sit relatively low, the wheels adjustable, the pedals are within easy reach, all the controls themselves are within easy reach, although it's a bit odd. I took a bit of time to get used to these stalks. They seem to be at quite a high angle, which I find a little bit odd. But everything else, as I say, is within, well, it's within the driver's control. You're not having to search across. And I just like the fact that you can easily adjust temperature and volume of the audio system rather than having to go into a separate screen to find all of that. So, you know, kudos to Vauxhall for doing that. Now, the Wltp figures in terms of range for this car is 209 miles. Now, that's bizarrely 8 miles less than a mechanically identical E208, but never mind, I can't really see it doing that. I mean, I've never seen, even charging it to full, I haven't seen much more than 165 miles out of the car. And what's really odd as well, and the Peugeot was exactly the same, so I'm not labelling this at Vauxhall, but the gauge of the actual sort of like miles, it varies wildly. I had a long drive in it last week and it went from sort of like 45 miles left remaining to 70 miles in sort of like the space of 6 miles, and I couldn't quite figure it. It's very difficult to gauge how much you've actually got, well, left in the tank, if you put it like that. That's where the Hyundai and the Kias are so much better. Their range prediction, and even the Renault Zoe, the range prediction is so much more accurate than you get out of the PSA cars. That said, it's got a 50 kilowatt hour battery, which you charge via the standard CCS charging port back here. So if you can find a 100 kilowatt charger, it will go to 80% in just over 30 minutes. From a 50 kilowatt one, it'll still do it in 45 minutes. And from a home wall box overnight, it's 7.5 hours from empty to full. Now, there are 2 trim levels available with the Corsa E. There's the SE model at £27,665, and then the Elite Nav that we have here, which is at just over £30,000. Now, those prices also include the plug-in car grant from the UK government, which is applicable at time of filming. The disadvantage that Vauxhall have with this, of course, is with Peugeot, their sister brand now, where you can start the E208 range at just over £25,000, as you can also with the Renault Zoe model range. Also within the 208 range, there is a much greater trim level choice, and the top spec GT model that we had for filming the other week, which is the same price as this Elite Nav Corsa, is much better specified, and that gives much better value for money across the Peugeot range than it does in the Corsa range. So the competition for the Corsa is of course now coming from an internal source, with its parent company PSA offering the E208, which obviously is mechanically identical to this car. But you've also obviously got the other French rival with the Renault Zoe, another car that we really rate. We obviously, in terms of price wise, we've also got to maybe think about the Mini Electric and Honda E, although as I've said before, I've kind of discounted those cars when comparing the Peugeot, the Renault and the Corsa, because purely I think they are bought on style rather than practicality. So it really is just these 3 main rivals. Now, if you were to go lower, of course you've got the Volkswagen triplets, the Skoda Citigo, the Seat Mii and Volkswagen E-Up, although bizarrely they are now starting to be discontinued across the UK. But Volkswagen will be entering back into the fray with the ID3, which is a slightly bigger car. It's more Golf sized, and that's going to come in a lower battery spec at just over the £30,000 in basic trim, so that might also be a contender for you. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Vauxhall Corsa E. We like the design that shows a more sophisticated side to Vauxhall. Its build quality, its comfort, and it's easy to drive and live with. We don't like the limited model range. its on-road dynamics, the brakes, the lack of flair and design touches inside, and the high price. You know, I've always had an affinity for Vauxhall. Well, I sold them briefly back in 1995, and my family's owned more Vauxhall-Opel products than we did Ford products. So I've always wanted to see the brand, which has got such a rich, illustrious heritage, do well, especially now under PSA ownership, where they were left in the doldrums under General Motors. The fact that PSA were able to get Vauxhall to bring this car to market in such a short space of time, 2 years, remember, just 2 years, shows real promise, and the car is very, very good. Yet I still find it slightly lacking. You see, what they've tried to do is they've made it a bit more grown up, a little bit more sombre, a little bit more mature, and that doesn't sit well with me. It's lacked that little bit of vibrance and design desirability that the previous generation Corsas had. It's sort of like the sort of frumpy cousin to the little sexy little French 208, if that makes sense. So in that way, I'm having to put it in third place behind the Renault Zoe, because although it does some things better than the Zoe, that car has a little design flair, a little bit something special that you expect for £30,000. And let's remember that £30,000, that is a lot to spend on a Vauxhall Corsa. But yet, all is not lost, because Vauxhall are about to come out with the Mokka, its small SUV crossover, which shows a real return to design flair. And of course, it's going to be available with the electric drivetrain. So that is a car that we are going to look forward to driving. So there you go, more consumer advice from AutoEV. I told you, it's a service we provide. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. See, I told you I was going to end it on a positive note. It's not all doom and gloom, you know. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe, and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded. Sorry, what's that? You want more than just videos? Okay, did you know that AutoEV is also a website? That's right, autoev.co.uk. Not only is it all the latest news, reviews and musings, including motorsport from the electric vehicle world, but we've got literally hundreds of used electric vehicles for sale from dealers up and down the country.